becomes conscious of seeing something else than the object. In other words, conscious of its own medium. What Sargent's actually saying, I think translated in today's world of photography, is most of us just photograph what we know is there, me included. But what Sargent's saying is photograph what you actually see. And right there, that's two different photographs. If this is your first time here, welcome. Great to have you. And where's here? Well, here's a place where we just look at art history, the artists themselves, how they saw the world, and how it just might influence how we see ours today. If you're returning for another adventure, thank you. Always welcome. Great to have you. Today we're going to look at three painters, one of them who picked up a camera. And as they walked their path, they learned to see a little bit differently along the way, and that's exactly what we're here for. So come on, let's take a walk. Sargent and Monet met back in 1876, quickly became friends, and remained that way the rest of the time they were breathing. A quick story about the two of them is Sargent would often go and visit Monet at Giverny, and they would quite often paint together. And here's one that Sargent did of Monet, and some say this is what Monet was looking at. But Sargent didn't bring his paints with him. Instead, he borrowed Monet's. He liked to tell Monet that he wanted to learn and understand his palette and see the world as Monet did, in contradiction to his studio palette, which is likely very true. But I like to imagine Monet just kind of hanging out in his garden. He's painting, and he sees John roll up across the Japanese bridge across the pond, empty-handed again. And Monet says to himself, well, John somehow forgot his paints with him, and he wants to borrow my stuff, and then all he wants to do is complain when I tell him for the 100th time, I ain't got no black, John. I don't use it. Well, that's my version anyway. Here's something interesting. Take a look at this for a second. This is Monet, Woman with a Parasol, 1875. Right next to it, this is Sargent, Gust of Wind, 1886. Same subject, basically. A woman standing outside, wind blowing, sky behind her. Now, neither one of these looks like a photograph of that moment, and that's the whole point. Monet isn't painting a woman holding a parasol. He's painting what it felt like to look up at her, the light dissolving the edge of her dress into the sky. The wind you can almost feel in your chest just looking at it. Sargent does the same thing. The white dress, it's barely there, merging with the light. He's not documenting her. He's painting the experience of seeing her in that moment, in that light. And right there, that's the letter. The eye becomes conscious of seeing something else than the object. Most of us, when we go out, myself included, we photograph what we actually know is there. A woman, a street, a building. We photograph the noun. Sargent's saying, photograph what you actually see. The light eating the edge of things. The color that doesn't look real, but it's there. Capture that moment before your brain actually realizes what it's looking at. Now let's fast forward about 70 years. Before Saul Leiter became the icon in photography, street photography, that we know him as of today, he was a painter. Saul kind of followed in the abstract expressionism movement. He met a painter named Richard Pousset Dart. This guy here, also hanging out with this guy. You recognize him? Richard was experimenting with photography and kind of got Saul into it. And Saul once said, I began to think of photography that might be something that would allow me to earn a living. I can just see Saul walking the streets of New York, have no idea whether he ever read the letter of Sargent, but he knew exactly what he was talking about. Saul once said, I don't believe in explaining what I do. I took the photographs I took because I liked what I saw. Look at his work. From his blurred colors through rain-soaked glass, figures behind layers, even his early work in fashion for Harper's Bazaar. May not be perfect focus, may not be perfect light, but I think he just liked what he saw, and he captured the experience of seeing them. Sargent wrote the letter in the 1880s. Saul just proved it every time he went out with a camera in New York. Saul continued to paint the rest of his life, and he also did some really cool paint-photo combinations that people really don't talk about too much, but just sharing a few of them. I think they're pretty cool. So here's the thing I want you to try next time you're out with your camera. Before you bring your camera up to your eye, don't put a name on it. Before you decide what the shot is, look at the edges. Look at the peripherals. Take a picture of what your eye sees before your brain puts a label on it. That moment right there, right before you knew what you were looking at, that's what Sargent was talking about. That's what Monet did. And that's what Saul photographed. And here's just one I wanted to share from this week. I glanced out the window late in the day just walking by, and I just took a quick snap with the phone. I have no idea what it was, just a moment, and the moment only lasted about a minute. It wasn't a sunset. This is facing east. And it was a true moment that my brain had no idea and still doesn't know what it was. Hey, and sometimes it just works out. That's the photograph. Well, that's going to wrap up this week. Hope you enjoyed it. Always appreciate you watching. And when you're out with your camera this week, check those peripherals. And as always, let's create something real.